Get ready for a lot of this. Jackson's come a long way. From aliens to zombies to maniac, sex, drug-dealing puppets. I wonder what he's going to tackle next. Oh, interesting. Heavenly Creatures is a true story about two young girls, Juliet and Pauline. Or Paul. Or Deborah? Janine? The names gets confusing. Anyways, the overall premise, if you're unaware, is that these two girls develop a very intense and eventually unhealthy relationship with one another that ends up with blood on their hands. I might sound redundant, but just like his previous films, I've never seen this movie or heard of it really, and let's see how he tackles a drama. The film opens up looking at the beautiful and peaceful New Zealand, and then it's ruined with the most annoying sound that you're going to hear for 25% of the runtime. We are introduced to our leads. This is Kate Winslet's first role. Man, her career skyrocketed after this. The school scenes are your typical private Christian 50s school scenes. Look at that. Kate is the one drawing something.
Good heavens, Juliet. What on earth is this?
St. George and the Dragon.
Jack, I want you to draw me like one of your French girls.
Man, how things change within 3 years. Eventually, Pauline starts spending a lot more time with Juliet and is convinced that her family wants to adopt her and they will live happily ever after. This girl is nuts, I swear by it. You can say that their relationship becomes intimate. Small little kisses here and there, but over time, they end up sleeping together. Now, I'm going to save the true story aspects later. Let's finish the review first. A big part of the movie is how strong and alive our lead's imagination is, and how they play off each other. The scenes that show their imagination thriving reminded me of Alfonso Cuarón's A Little Princess. Beautiful film if you haven't seen it. When these scenes happened, I was taken aback for a second, but overall, I really enjoyed them in the film. Now let's talk about Jackson as a director. This film is totally out of his comfort zone, and I can appreciate that because you should expand on what you know. Jackson is known for horror comedies, and so he wanted to prove that he could do something else. He's not just tackling a drama, though. He's telling a true story murder that happened in New Zealand back in the 50s. It was a risky move to make this since, at the time of its release, the real Pauline and Juliet were still alive. Still, Jackson's style of filmmaking strives in this movie. There is your iconic Jackson shot where he rushes towards a character in frame to get a shaky close-up or an extreme close-up of an actor. The acting was decent all around, but oh my gosh, the screaming and crying. Oh man, what's the lesser of two evils? This? Or this? That won't be the last time she pops up in one of these reviews. A running joke in the film is how ugly the girls think Orson Welles is, to the point where he comes alive and stalks them. There's also a rumor that if you say Citizen Kane is not the greatest movie of all time, he will come and kill you, so watch out. That scene is the peak of the girls screaming, and it made me want to cut my ears off and throw them into a garbage disposal. Oh, hold on, let's abrupt for a Peter Jackson cameo right now. I am shocked he's not eating a carrot. Okay, well, I guess that's the review. It's time to look at the true story aspects that were all taken from Pauline's diary and see if they add up. A lot of what I'm about to read is from an article written by Jacob Shelton on Ranker.com. I'm going to leave a link down below if you'd like to read in more detail. But let's rip this movie apart. Jackson took the liberty to assume that the girls were close together, like taking baths and sleeping together, which wasn't true. Juliet stated that they were extremely close, spending a lot of time together, but in court, the idea of them having a sexual relationship was brought up but never proven. Doing stuff like this is not the norm in films, and it was a risk that Jackson and his wife were willing to take. Who knows what would have happened if this movie was bombed? Would Kate Winslet be a household name? Would she even have gotten the role in Titanic? Would this have ruined Jackson's career as a filmmaker? Obviously it clearly didn't, but it's just kind of interesting to think of what if. Like I mentioned earlier, one of my favorite parts were the fantasy scenes. Yeah, that never happened. Juliet explains that even though she was on medication that affected her judgment, she always knew the difference between reality and fantasy. An aspect of the film ignored was the fact that Pauline was going to take her own life if Juliet didn't help her kill her mom. In the movie, Juliet was on board the whole way. After the death of Pauline's mother, the movie fades to black and briefly explains what went down afterwards, which is probably my biggest complaint with the movie. I would have loved to seen the aftermath of the girls trying to explain that she had just fallen when it clearly looked like she got murdered, and then them going to court, testifying, even possibly going into jail, and the movie ending with them leaving jail a few years later. The film also states that the girls weren't allowed to see each other after they were released from prison, which isn't the case. They actually lived near each other in Scotland for a few years. To wrap things up, the real-life Juliet called Peter Jackson an idiot director, and I don't blame her. It's one thing to tell a sensitive murder story, making sure you're honoring the ones who were wrongly murdered, yet to tell the story roughly 40 years later when everyone is clearly still alive, well, besides Pauline's mom. Again, going back to this being a risky move for Jackson, his career could have ended with this movie, and thankfully it wasn't. After ripping this movie's true aspects apart, it's still an okay movie. It's probably the weakest out of the four up to this point, but Hollywood would finally notice this Kiwi director, and they would give him one movie before he would become a household name. I wonder what that film is.
We would like to cruise with some style, man.
You know you guys left me high and dry tonight?
Oh, thank God we're back to horror.
I get to the house, nothing's happening. Couldn't believe it.
Is that Marty McFly? Like always, guys, smack that like button and share this with your murder mystery friends. If you haven't yet, join the evolution, and I'll see you next time.